الأجل يوسف زهرة، الأجل يوسف زهرة، الأجل يوسف زهرة.
Of Islam, and for the names again that have been listed here: Marhum As-Sakhawat Ali Mirza, Mahdi Ali Mirza, Sayyid Muhammad Taqi, Sayyid Muhammad Hussain, Muhammadi Fatima Bibi Zahida, and today's sponsors, Hazrat Majlis and Shuhada Islam. Fatiha. Those of you who brought your kids, can you please make sure they're beside you, inshallah. Durood bhejiye Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون، الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، العبد المعيد الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، صاحب العصر والزمان، خليفة الرحمن، إمام الإنس والجان، ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله ولرسوله إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Shaheed and Shahid, the martyr and the witness, has been our ongoing topic. Tonight is lecture number 5. We have outlined a very detailed breakdown for all of you on the very first night of our majalis, and we've reached our halfway point now that we are here. We mentioned that the first 4 discussions will be describing Imam Hussain as the Shaheed, his philosophy, his mission, his ideology. We talked about the historical context by which he began his mission, the groups that needed awakening and the groups that needed awareness. We talked about the concept last night about the purchasing and the selling of the soul for the ridayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how Imam Hussain was able to get to a level where he was able to, as the Quran says, there are those who sell their soul for the pleasure of Allah, and then there are those where Allah purchases that soul in turn for Jannat. This transaction between Allah and Imam Hussain occurred, and that's what caused him on the day of Ashura to be completely content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though his tragedy was the greatest of mankind. We talked about tips last night, practical tips on how to get to that state, at least begin that journey. And as I promised, from today until the day of Arba'een, we'll look at the second half of the equation, being the Shahid, the witness. That is, of course, you and I. If Imam Hussein is the Shaheed, we are the witness. We are the ones that are fully aware and have knowledge of the Shahadat of Abu Abdullah. We come together like this every single year to remember that Shahadat. However, the responsibility we have towards that Shaheed is something that needs to be discussed. And from today until Saturday, inshallah, which is our last lecture, we'll look at 5 unique responsibilities for us to uphold this mission of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Alaykum salam. The first one tonight I wanted to begin with is grieving for this Shaheed. Let me also send my condolences to the Imam of our time, the Rahbar of the Ummah and the Marajin, all of you. Tonight being the night of the 17th of Safar, we have in a lot of our riwayat that tonight is the Shabi Shahadat of our 8th Imam, Imam Rabi alayhi salatu wassalam. Can you recite for me a nice, a better salat now, please? This is the Imam that, as many of you know, was ghareeb in his life, but today he hosts millions upon millions on a daily basis. He's the one where, if those who have been to Mashhad in the Izn Dukhul, that board that you recite for the first time before you enter the Haram, that is a permission of the entry inside. In there is a piece that says that you are ghareeb in my country, like I was ghareeb here as well. But back then there was no one to look after me, but I promise you that I will look after you while you are here. We have a hadith that says the one who has gone to visit our 8th Imam, Imam Raza, will come in 3 different spots in the hereafter. 1 in his grave, 2 when he's given the Kitab Amal, and 3 before that Polish Sirat, where he enters heaven or he enters hell, inshallah. This Imam of ours lived at a very difficult time for him and the Shias. He was one of the few individuals where they were physically separated from him and his Shias. Inshallah, in Masaib, we'll talk a little bit about Imam Rada Shahadat. But you should know that this era of the Bani Abbasids was a little bit unique from the Bani Umayyah. The Bani Umayyah used a different tactic to destroy the Ahlul Bayt. The Bani Abbasids used a different tactic. The Bani Umayyah used a tactic of character assassination, having this association of negativity towards the name and the shakhsiyat and the personality of the Ahlul Bayt. Muawiyah didn't only want to kill on Imam Ali, he wanted to remove any zikr khair of Imam Ali from society as well. Any sort of remembrance of him at all. So this custom of 95 years, almost a century long, of sending la'anat on the name of Amir al-Mu'mineen was established by this individual. And in the process, this propaganda against the Ahlul Bayt began, such that when the news of his shahadat was spread all over Sham and Syria, the first question they asked was, what was Ali doing in the masjid? That was their tactic. They used the same tactic to make the ashab of Imam Hassan turn against him. But the Bani Abbasids, the one that began with the 7th Imam onwards, used the divide and conquer tactic. They would physically separate the Imam from their leaders. And thus this era of the beginning of marji'at and the beginning of the preparation of an Imam who's not with us began from our 8th Imam all the way until our 11th Imam. This era and Dora, I wish I had more time, from the 8th Imam to the 11th Imam, the era that we know very little about, I'm sorry. They are the less popular Imams. The 8th Imam, the 9th Imam, the 10th Imam. Sorry. Their shahadat and their waladat don't attract as many people as 30th Rajab does. There's no levels in imamat, but however you and I have levels in our heart for them for some reason. Khair. This era of the 8th Imam to the 11th Imam is so relevant to us as individuals waiting for the Imam that we really should understand that era. We have 6-year-old Imams in this era, 9-year-old Imams in this era. We have the concept of the Imam being here, but him assigning a faqih almost in a different part of Hijaz or a different part of Iraq, where if even though I'm not there, you can ask your question to an individual that I have appointed there to ask. Sometimes we believe that the system of marjiyat is created by the ulama or by the Iranian government. It's not. It's a system that comes from the Ahlul Bayt. It's a system that began in this era. And Imam Raza's era was the one that really began this. He was the one individual where he had our 9th Imam in a very late stage in his life. 47, 48 years old, some say. Such to the point where the Shi'as of Imam Qadim, alayhi salam, his father, began to doubt the imamat of our 8th Imam. And this group historically, called the Waqifi group, was born. The Waqifi group was a small sect, which is dead right now, that began to divert off the path of the Ahlul Bayt. They were convinced that to Imam Qasim, they'll say, your son, Imam Raza, doesn't have a son this late in his life, so there's no way he is your successor. You have to be Imam Zamana for us. So they stopped. They did what? They stopped at Imam Qasim. Anyways, this era is a crucial one. And one that inshallah will one day, someday, study at a future date. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. To understand the azamat of grieving for Aba Abdullah. And let me tell my elders right now in the audience, there's a movement out there in the U.S. especially. A movement to make Imam Hussein's commemoration strictly academic and intellectual. A movement where they come and they ask us questions like on Shabi Ashur. If Imam Hussein was busy worshipping Allah, why are we busy crying for Imam Hussein? Why shouldn't we also worship Allah on that night? Why shouldn't we also have this idea of understanding Imam Hussein? That crying for Imam Hussein does nothing. Let me address that tonight, inshallah. Let me also talk about the greatness of the tears that are shed for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein according to ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt. Because the reality is that this generation of ours, and I'm in that generation, they don't understand the importance of the grieving for Imam Hussein. At least I don't think so. They don't attempt to cry during Masa'ib, during Matam. They'd rather be in the back or outside. They don't see it as a part of the majlis. They only see the 45-minute lecture as the everything of the majlis. They don't understand that Sina Zani or Matam is a crucial part of the entire system of the majlis. They don't understand that if you can't cry, the hadith says, make a face like you're crying. If you can't do that, at least put your head down. I've been to centers where the lights are closed, Masayib is going on, and they're looking at me like I'm a movie screen or something. There's etiquette involved. And a lot of my parents say, oh, they can't fake it. They're not hypocrites. Na'udhu billah, the hadith says, if you can't cry, then look like you're crying. For Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, all those rules are there, mawjood. Let's examine this tonight for a moment. What is the status of one tear for Imam Hussein? Just one tear for Imam Hussein. And also answer this question that sometimes we have, that I come on the day of Ashura, I cry for Hussein, I pick up my passport to heaven, and I go towards heaven. What I do all year round doesn't matter. I've come on the day of Ashura, I've shed a few tears, I've stamped heaven on my forehead, and now I'm going to live my whole life as a Jannati individual. That's also one misconception. Let's examine that tonight. Inshallah, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Let's start off with a beautiful tradition. Sheikh Bahai narrates in a very beautiful tradition. This is mind-blowing for me. He says that, and this is in the discussion of the dignity of a mu'min. There's a whole discussion in the Road of Akhlaq on the hurmat of a mu'min, the dignity of a mu'min. How you should know, and I'm sure all of you know, that the hurmat of a mu'min inside hadith, kal Ka'aba, the hadith says, is like the Kaaba. If somebody, God forbid, disrespects the Kaaba, we'd all be in arms. A mu'min's dignity is like that Kaaba. In fact, we have a hadith that says, kal afdal al-Kaaba. It's afdal than the Kaaba. The dignity of the mu'min. Why is it such? The Quran says, وَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ وَلِرَسُولِهِ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. The exclusive property of Allah is respect. Respect is owned by Allah. The lam sometimes you see in front of Allah, lillahi, sometimes you see that. That lam is called lam in milkiyat in the world of Arabic grammar. Meaning what? That whatever precedes it or proceeds it is the exclusive property of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this case, it's izzat. Respect, no one in this world, with all due respect to all of us, deserves respect but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He takes that respect and He distributes it to who He wishes. For example, you and I, the little respect that we might have, the little shu'rat that we might have, a little bit of fame in this world that we might have, is not because of our actions, with all due respect. It's because Allah has granted that fame for us. It's because Allah has covered our defects. It's because Allah hasn't opened our file to all of you yet. Otherwise, we have a hadith Qudsi that's very scary. That says, "O my creation, if my creation knew about you what I know about you, not one individual would say salam to you." So izzat and respect is the exclusive property of Allah. He takes that property, He distributes it to who He wishes. Now, if someone has a little bit of respect, and you now elect, or we now elect to strip that individual of their respect, embarrass them, ridicule them, drag their name in mud, assassinate their character in the community, what we're doing essentially is playing with God's izzat. In this discussion on izzat, Sheikh Bahai has a very beautiful hadith. He says that, he's talking about to what extent Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covers the dignity of the human being. He says there will be some individuals who will need to spend some time in the hellfire to make it to heaven. That might be a shock to all of you. But some people won't go straight to heaven. There are some people who, let's say, the adab in this world won't be enough. The adab in the grave won't be enough. He's got to spend a few days, a few months, a few weeks, let's say, in the hellfire, really scrubbing good, scrubbing clean, get all that dirt off, and then send them up to heaven. He goes on to say that those types of people who will first go to the hellfire, then enter heaven, it'll be known by the Ahl Jannah that this individual came from hell first, then came here. You guys are with me, inshallah, tonight? I know you're expecting an Urdu majlis. I'm sorry that Mulana Qaisar isn't here. I had nothing to do with that, I promise. I didn't. Okay? But those of you who are up all night praying, that please give us one more night with Sayyid Asad in the main hall. Your dua has come true, mashallah. May Allah increase your tawfiq. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Please stay with me. Stay with me, inshallah. It's a beautiful discussion. There will be some people who will enter heaven from hell. They'll have scars. You could tell that they have not come straight into heaven. And he says that there will even be some people in the heaven, who will question and wonder what this individual did, to first go to hell, then come to heaven. They'll talk amongst themselves. I wonder what he did. Now, yeah, he's in heaven, but you could tell he was somewhere else before he got here. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do to protect that individual from the questioning of the Ahl Jannah? They say that before he enters heaven, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes him to a pond, a body of water, called Hayawan. Haywan in Farsi means animal. Hayawan means a pure life. The pond is called pure life. He will take him there, he'll dip him in that water, he'll clean him up. No sign of the hellfire anywhere on him. It'll be as if he never was there to begin with. He'll enter the heaven just like everybody else will. No questions asked, no doubt, no shock, no nothing. He's one of us. Just to avoid a little bit of, oh, I wonder what that guy did. To first go to hell, then come to heaven. Just to avoid that, Allah will take him to a pond called Hayawan, clean him up there, dip him there, get him ready for heaven. Then let him enter heaven. So even not one person in heaven might question, come here, tell me, what did you do in the dunya that you had to go to the hellfire? To avoid the recollection, the reminding of his sins, Allah takes us to this pond of water. Look at the extent Allah goes. The beauty of the hadith is this. The water in the pond of Hayawan is the collection of the tears that are shed for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein in this world. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Each one of us who have any tears, they're gathered, they're collected, they're stored, they're used to cleanse those who just before entering heaven will not have any sort of filth on them at all. Don't take these tears lightly, my youth especially. Let me give you another one. Our Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says, كُلُّ عَيْنٌ بَاقِيَةَ الْيَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. Every eye will cry on the day of judgment. إِلَّا بَكَتْ بِمُصَابِ الْحُسَيْنِ فِي الدُّنْيَا. Except for the eye that cried for Hussein in this world. Another hadith. Let's go one by one. And then we'll get to the actual philosophy behind these tears. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. To my youth, do me a favor. There's a book called Nafasul Mahmoom. Nafasul Mahmoom, Sheikh Abbas Qummi. It's one of the most authentic books we have about the tragedy of Karbala. Ayatollah Khamenei has said if you take that book on the memory and read it directly, there's no sahih or more mu'tabar book about the events of Karbala than this book. Nafasul Mahmoom. If you Google it, you have a very nice English translation on alislam.org. In the first part of that, Sheikh Abbas Qummi narrates 40 different traditions on the tears of Imam Hussein. 40 of them. One of them, he says, that one tear of Abu Abdullah, and I'll explain this carefully later on. One tear of Imam Hussein, be it the size of the wing of a mosquito, rolls down your cheek, all your sins are washed away. Your gunai kabira, your gunai saghira, washed away. The sins you forgot you did, the sins you remembered you did, all gone. The sins that you might commit in the future, all gone. One tear, the size of the wing of a mosquito. For who? Not for everybody. For Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. He is the only imam. The only imam where the crying for this Imam began at birth. There were 11 Imams, all 11 were Shaheed, correct? All of them were Shaheed. The news of their Shahadat was not announced to them when they were born. Nor was it announced to their parents when their child was born. A child is born into the family, it's a time for rejoice, a time to celebrate, a time to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for Imam Hussein, he is the only Imam that minutes after being born in this world, Jibreel comes down to Rasulullah and tells him about the day of Ashura. And as many of you know, mashallah, you've heard it for centuries now, that he began to cry. And when his daughter asked him, Baba, this is a moment of joy. This is your grandson. And then he narrates to his daughter, Fatima Zahra, salamu alayha, exactly what happens and what will happen to him on the day of Ashura. And when she asked him that, Baba, on the day of Ashura, will you be there with my Hussein? He says no. She says, Baba, will Ali be with him on the day of Ashura? He says no. She says, Baba, will Hassan be with him on the day of Ashura? He says no, he'll be all by himself. And then she asked a very important question, that who will remember my Hussein then? And then very famously, as all you know, the Prophet says that a nation, a group will be created, will be born, that from now until the day of judgment will cry for your Hussein. Every single time that we shed a tear for Abu Abdullah, we're keeping that promise of Rasulullah to his daughter. Our fathers pass away. The first birthday is hard. The 5th, the 6th, the 10th gets a little bit easier. Easier in terms of the grief. Yes, we miss him. The tears are not as much. But every single time the day of Ashura comes about, I can sit on this member and simply say, Ya Hussein, and everybody begins to cry. When Imam Rada says to Ibn Shabib, when this world, when this dunya gives you grief upon grief upon grief, and gives you one tragedy after one tragedy after one tragedy, and you have no idea what to do, how to handle it, where to go, don't do anything. Just say, Ya Hussein. Just say, Ya Hussein. You know, Mutawakkil was one of the most tyrant individuals in the history of the Ahlul Bayt. He was the first ruler who actually attacked Karbala, the Haram of Imam Hussein. His sole purpose, it seemed in books, was to remove the remembrance of Imam Hussein from society. Back then, it was such to the point where if you wanted to go do your ziyad of Abu Abdullah, you had to sacrifice something, a limb, a child sometimes. And people did it. This individual did everything he could, shed the blood of those who loved Hussein. Created this fear for those who would go say salams to Hussein. And the books tell us, Allahu Akbar. The night of the 1st of Muharram, during his own rule, he would go around the entire village. And every other year he would hear the sound of some majlis, some azadari, some dhikr of Hussein happening. But on that night he heard nothing. He thought to himself, I've done my job. There's no dhikr of Hussein anywhere left. Now Hussein is dead. He says this and he goes towards the mountains. In the mountains he hears a faint whisper. He gets closer. The whisper becomes a little bit louder. He gets to an area that's a small little cave, the book says. Inside, there can't be more than 2 or 3 people in that cave. He stands outside, he listens. That whisper that got louder was the whisper of, "Hi Hussein, Ya Hussein." There's been attempts made to destroy the zikr of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. There are attempts today as well. I mentioned a few nights ago, the enemy attacks the Shias on 3 different pillars. And I didn't conclude that point that day. And some of you asked me to expand. Let's expand right now. Number 1 is leadership. Number 2 is finances. Number 3 is motivation. You want to gather any group for any inqilab, any revolution, any movement, any mission. These 3 components are essential. You have to have a good leader. You have to have money. You have to have a motivational factor to motivate the people. We are no different. Our leadership is our marajiyat and our rahbariyat. Our money is our khumf system. And our zakat system. Our motivation is this azadari. The amount of people that come running through those doors simply for the name of Hussein is unbelievable. You don't see them all year round. You won't see them after Ashura sometimes. Where they come from, where they went afterwards, who knows? All we know is that where you have a farish and you have Ya Hussein somewhere, people will come. And the enemy right now, today, is attacking these 3 pillars. Fitna and fasad are on these 3 pillars. On marjiyat for sure. On rahbariyat for sure. On khums for sure. And on azadari for sure. Either within the circle or outside the circle. It's up to you and I to maintain the dignity of this azadari system. And we do that with the grieving of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. If us as witnesses towards the shahadat of Imam Hussein have any responsibility, it is for us to do what? To maintain the grief of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam. Like I said before, spent 33 years after the day of Ashura. And while his khidmat and service to the deen is incredible, one thing that all the historians wrote that he did time and time again was he made sure that not only would people remember Ashura, but they would cry for Ashura as well. He would ask poets to start again, put more grief into it. He passed by an animal being sacrificed and reminded that individual who was the owner of the animal to say, "You gave that animal some water before you sacrificed it. My father was sacrificed thirsty." If that's not enough for us, look at our own Imam. Pick up Zat al-Nahiya. Allahu Akbar. Zat al-Nahiya says, this is now Imam al-Zamana talking to Imam Hussein, saying that my salams to you. That if I had been there on the day of Ashura, I would have thrown my body on the bed of arrows. I would have sacrificed my family for your family. My blood for your blood. My children for your children. My women for your women. But I wasn't there on the day of Ashura. So morning and evening, I will cry tears of blood for you. Our Mullah, our Imam that we're waiting for, we believe sits at the head of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein on the day of Ashura, and blood rolls down the man's face. But we want to lower and limit this movement to an academic, intellectual movement. There's no point in crying, Sayyid. Let's understand why these tears are so important. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We have a hadith that says the one who cannot cry because his heart has hardened. The whole bahas in akhlaq on the hardening of the heart. Why it happens, how it happens. Symptoms, effect, causes, treatment, etc., etc. And the one whose heart has hardened has hardened due to the excessive amount of sin that he commits. Sometimes, you and I, or at least I do, we try to minimize our sin. We tell ourselves that, that was a small sin. Or the white lie, the West calls it, right? It's a white lie. It's a very small lie. And what do? We do it because we don't want to convince ourselves that I am committing major sins. Right? We know that, and I said this before, we know that confession in Islam is haram. You should know that by now. Confession in Islam is haram, not allowed. You can't confess your sins to each other. Even joking, I missed Fajr today, this and that, I'm not fasting today, I can't do it, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. It's not allowed in Islam. Why is the question? Because the person in front of you, when he hears that confession, the first feeling he gets is, I'm not as bad as this guy is. That's true. We don't have those ideas that you come on Friday and, there's a wall between you. On one side is you. On the other side is Muhassad. And you say, Agha, I have sinned. He says, but my son, you are forgiven. Now go on your way. And Monday you start with a clean slate. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you do everything you can. You come back on Friday, Agha, I have sinned again. Say, my son, I have forgiven you again. We don't have that concept. Because we search for ways to somehow convince ourselves that I'm better than I am. It's a disease called the ujb in Islam. Narcissism. We love ourselves. We do everything for the pat on the back. We want the applause. We want the award. We want the plaque, the trophy, some sort of a frame with our plaque on it. We are involved at Sunday school because on Teacher's Day, you get a nice gift. If the gift for some reason is lost or your name is not called, there's qayamat all of a sudden. That I'm a main teacher here. What happened? You didn't call my name. How could you? I'm not teaching next year. Whoa. Calm down. We have this idea. And in this era of social media and the selfie that I love talking about is and does feed that narcissistic dimension inside of us. The whole discussion on technology and the internet and social media, I wish I had more time, is this idea that we can't be wrong. Dr. Google, Alama Google, has to be right. You search the 50 masal on there, you start on Google, has to be right, so I'm right. The alim says whatever, the marja says whatever, Alama Google is my hujjat. You put in a few symptoms, coughing, sneezing, short of breath, Dr. Google says you'll be dead in 6 months. Oh my God. Happens. That's the whole process. So what do? We do our best to convince ourselves, I'm not as bad as I am. And Imam Ali says very dangerously, the moment that you minimize a sin in your eyes, it's maximized in the eyes of Allah. Allahu Akbar. The moment that you minimize a sin in your eyes, it's not that big of a deal. Everyone does it, Maulana. Everyone's daughter's weddings have music in our mix. If my daughter has that wedding, what's the big deal? Minimize it. Maximize in the eyes of Allah. Because Imam Sajjad says, don't look at the size of the sin. Look at who you're committing that sin against. He is Azim, he is great. Your sin is also great. So what do? We convince ourselves that what I'm doing is not that bad. I know 10 other people who are worse than me. And right away what ends up happening is that this idea of Islah and reform is all out the window. We become complacent. We become habitual. We convince ourselves that the amount of worship that I do is not only enough, it's good enough as well. When I get up for salat, I fast, I'm good with my spouse and my kids, that's pretty much it. And that should get me into heaven. I've had individuals come to me and tell me, I know, Maulana, the amount that I do will get me into heaven. Allahu Akbar. Those are satanic thoughts, I'm sorry. There's never a moment where you should be satisfied with the amount that you do. When it comes to risk, you should, Imam Ali, when it comes to risk, always compare yourself to those who are lower than you and say Alhamdulillah. When it comes to tawfiq, always compare yourself to those who are higher than you and say Inshallah. This idea of us being okay with where we are, I'm the same way I've been for 15 years. This is my habitual ibadat. Then the niyat, the sincerity, the ikhlas is stripped from that. It becomes, like I said, part of the to-do list. Milk, eggs, groceries, salat. And that's dangerous. Maulana Rumi, he has a collection of poems called Masnawi. And he has a very unique style of writing his poems. If you've ever come across his poetry, those of you who are into poetry, you know that he uses Quranic concepts and describes them using his poetry in a story form. During the time of Nabi Sulaiman, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, or Zakaria, either one of those two, there was a young man who existed during that time who lived amongst that prophet. And he was a man who believed in God, worshipped God, followed the steps of Nabi Sulaiman. At the same time, however, did what also he wanted to do with his life. Made mistakes, committed sins, openly, didn't hide it, wasn't too concerned about it. And he was a successful business individual. He would challenge Nabi Sulaiman that you threaten us or you make us scared about this afterlife. Whatever is going to happen afterwards, you'll be held accountable, and this grave idea, and barzakh, and akhirat, and all that kind of stuff. Look at me. Yeah, I follow a few bit of your rules. I also do whatever I want from the sin. I live my life the way I want to live my life. And my risk, mashallah, is pouring in. I am more successful than most my age. So I must be doing something right for Allah to gift me this. I'm living my life on one side. I'm sinning, openly sinning. I'll tell you right now, I can't do all that you ask me to do. I do make mistakes. At the same time, I do this as well. How many of us are like that? He challenges Nabi Sulaiman, go and ask your Allah about people like me. The best of both worlds. He's giving me and giving me and giving me, and I keep breaking his rules one by one by one. It's a joke what you say. Nabi Sulaiman goes, Wahi comes down, he goes back to the boy, he answers him. Look at his answer. He says, young man, tell me the last time that after you worshipped my Lord, you felt a sense of contentment. He said, I've never felt contentment. I worship your Lord out of the fact that you tell me to, it's habit, there really isn't anything attached to it. He said, that's the biggest adab that my Lord has bestowed upon you. You worship Him, but it's stripped of any sort of contentment. When the Quran says, "Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'inna al-qulub," that with the dhikr of Allah comes itminan in the qalb. When that qalb isn't there, when itminan isn't there, then that dhikr of Allah also becomes meaningless. He says, you think that you're successful, but Allah determines success by the state of your heart. That heart is empty, and you are failure. As قَدْ أَفْلَحَ صلوا على محمد وعلى Prophet says, وَنَفْسِ وَمَا سَوَاهَا فَالْحَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. The one who purifies it is successful. The one who corrupts it is a failure. Very simple. How do you define success? The state of your heart. Imam Jafri as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. He says this, Al-qalbu haram Allah, wa la tuskin haram Allah, ghayr Allah. Irfanic hadith. Mystic tradition. One that you can lose sleep over. The haram of Imam Raza is in Mashhad. The haram of Abu Abdullah is in Karbala. The haram of Allah is not in Mecca. Imam Sadiq says the haram of Allah is the qalb of the insan. Is the heart of the insan. The sanctuary of Allah resides in the heart of Allah. وَلَا تُسْكِنْ حَرَمَ اللَّهِ غَيْرُ اللَّهِ. And don't allow anything to reside in the haram of Allah except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have everybody but Allah in our hearts, don't we? We have anger. We have resentments. We have grudges, conflicts, fights, arguments, things we hold on to for the past 5 years. A sibling we haven't spoken to in 10 years. All these things are in our hearts. God comes in and says, oh, this is full? I'm sorry. And leaves. There's no room for me here. And when that happens, the heart begins to harden. When that heart hardens, the tears dry up. Why is that so important? One point and then towards Masad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Very famously, our first Imam giving advice to our second Imam says, the heart of the youth is like uncultivated land. Very famous. A land that's uncultivated needs cultivators. And there's a whole discussion in Akhlaq that who is the cultivator of the land of these young individuals. And the conclusion is that there are many cultivators. One, of course, are the parents of that young individual. One, of course, is the community. One, of course, is the youth himself. He chooses how to cultivate that land. Sometimes the parent comes and cultivates that land. Right or wrong, doesn't matter. Sometimes the community comes with, mashallah, their youth events and cultivates that land. Plants seeds inside of that land. And watches those seeds grow when he's 15, 20, 25, mashallah. Then he becomes a ready, pious soldier of our Imam, inshallah. Cultivators. If ever you've seen barren land, uncultivated land, you know that you can do what you want with it, provided it's not hard. If it's hard to break that land, it becomes very, very hard. Very difficult. So what do? You water it. Please follow me. You water it. When it becomes nice and soft, then the cultivation process begins. Sometimes our uncultivated land of our youth hardens. We don't have the right cultivators. Unfortunately, our parents sometimes don't create the right environment at home. Sometimes the community they're involved in doesn't give them enough for cultivation. The society outside definitely doesn't give enough cultivation. They don't have the tawfiq to cultivate the land themselves. So the land remains uncultivated, and it hardens in that process. Now to dig anything, to put a shovel on that land, it's almost impossible. What do? You soften that land. And where you need water to soften the land outside the heart, inside the heart. What softens that cultivated land are the tears of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. Ask yourself, when you are in the state of musibah and grief and you're crying, you're in a different emotional state at that moment. Your heart is soft. Look, my daughter loves Play-Doh. She does. She tells me wherever I go, bring me back some Play-Doh. As long as it's soft, she can mold that however she wants. Look, Baba, I made this. Look, Baba, I made that. When it's crumpy and hard, she can't do anything with it. It's hard. She can't do anything with it. She throws it away and waits for me to buy her some new Play-Doh. Our heart is no different. When the tears of Imam Hussein begin to roll down our cheeks, our heart becomes like Play-Doh, and we can form it and mold it how we wish. If it's hard, sometimes it becomes useless. Why is that important in this day and age? There is a whole discussion on the connection between Imam Hussein and our 12th Imam. Whole bahs as Furat, Ta Furat. They have a whole volume of books written about that. From Ashur to Zahur. What Imam Hussein started on the day of Ashura Imam Izmana will finish when he comes. We have in Zafir Ashura, no other Imam is mentioned, Imam Mahdi is mentioned. We have in Du'ay Nutbah, no other Imam is mentioned, Imam Hassan is mentioned, Imam Hussein is mentioned. Of the 9 Imams after Imam Hussein, nobody is known as the avenger of Karbala except our Imam. We have a hadith that says when the Imam will leave this world, our Imam, who will give him kafan and dafan? Not his father, Imam Hussein will. There's a connection there. So where Imam Hussein allows our hearts to be molded and formed as we wish, Imam al-Zamana gives that formation to us. That this is how your heart should be. The tears of Imam Hussein, in essence, is the preparation for the arrival of our Imam. Grieving for Imam Hussein. Masa'ib for Imam Hussein. Malana, I can't cry. Fine, you can't cry. Some people can't cry. But at least make the face of grieving. Physically make the face of grieving. You'll notice that our elders, no matter what language it is, they'll have their head down out of respect. And so it's important for us to understand that these tears that we flow, that are flowing for Imam Hussein, is actually one of the main ingredients we have towards the preparation for our Imam. And that goes the same for Matam, it goes the same for Masa'ib as well. One of the main responsibilities we have towards the shahadat of Imam Hussein is to keep it alive through our grief. When Saddam was toppled, when the borders opened up, the first thing people did was what? They ran to Imam Hussein. To the point where the CNNs of the world and the BBCs of the world had to answer the question, who is this Hussein individual? Even now they don't understand how in a war-torn country 20 million people are flooding to that country. This is our salvation. This is what we have. A few points of musibat for Imam Raza. Tonight is the Shab Shahadat, of course. And we'll link that inshallah to Imam Hussein. There are some similarities between Imam Hussein and Imam Raza. Imam Raza died in a Gharib land. Imam Hussein was also Shaheed in the Gharib land. Imam Raza had a sister named Ma'suma who left her house to go and complete his mission. And out of love, she took on this difficult journey. Imam Hussein had a sister as well who took on a very difficult journey. Imam Raza hosts millions upon millions of zawad all over the world. Imam Hussein also hosts millions upon millions all over the world. If there are similarities, there are differences as well. Imam Raza, our salams to you tonight. Your separation from your Shi'as, your difficult journey, your forcing of you going towards Mashhad, all of that was very difficult. When you were given those poisonous grapes and you left this world, you gave advice and directions to one of your Shi'as. You said that when I leave this world, make sure that nobody from the Bani Abbasid does kafan or ghusl of my body. You will see a small white tent. Place my body in the same clothes that I died in, inside of that tent. Wait for that tent to be lifted. When that tent is being lifted, you'll see me in a kafan. In that state, bury me, please. And this companion of his did the exact same orders that Imam Raza told him to do. Imam Raza, 1,000 salams to you. Imam Raza, 1,000 salams to you. What you went through was very difficult. I don't mean to undermine Mola, your musibat. But the fact that you had somebody give you ghusl, The fact that you had somebody give you kafan. The fact that you were able to arrange for your own burial. You're far better off than your Jad Hussein on the day of Ashura. This was the same Hussein who on the 2nd of Muharram arrives in Karbala and begins to convert to the Bani Asad tribe. He says to the men of the Bani Asad, there's going to be a war here. Our bodies will be killed here. If you can, bury our bodies one by one. He then puts up a partition, Imam Hussein does, talks to the women of the Bani Asad tribe. Says, if your men are not able to bury us, then all of you women collectively dig one grave and just place our bodies in that grave. Imam Hussein then went to the kids of the Bani Asad tribe. If your mothers and your fathers are not able to bury us, you, with your small Ma'soom hands, pick up the khas of Karbala and drop it on our bodies. Mullah Hussein, you weren't even given that much respect where small Ma'soom children could place the khas on your body. Imam Sajjad says to Umar ibn Sa'd, Umar ibn Sa'd, you want to take us towards Kufa and Sham, but do us one favor. Before you take us on that journey, take us to the Maqtal of Karbala. Let us send our last salams to our Shuhada. When this qafila with Imam Sajjad and Bibi Zainab reached the body of Imam Hussein, Imam Sajjad says, Papi Amma, have you ever heard of a son who's leaving his father on the plains of Karbala? The way I am. One Mal'oon narrates a Nafas al-Mahmoom. Sheikh Abbas Qummi narrates that I was with the qafla of Aba Abdullah from day one to Kufa, to Sham, back to Karbala, back to Medina. I saw Zainab's cries in every step of the way. I saw her musibat in everything. I saw her in every state. But there's one thing I will never, ever forget. He says that when we brought this qafala back towards the Maqtal of Karbala, and for the first time after his shahadat, Bibi Zainab laid her eyes on the headless body of her brother Hussein, the cry and the shriek of Zainab will never leave my mind. Bibi Masamai Qum, accept our Pursa tonight for the shahadat of your brother. You never reached Masad, Bibi Masamai. You got to Qum. You entered Qum. You saw black flags everywhere. You wondered to the people that why these black flags here? One Shia comes forward, says, Shahzadi, have you not heard the news? No, I haven't. Your brother has become Shaheed in Masad. They say that Bibi Masamai Qum, from the sheer news of the shahadat of her brother, died 10 days later. Bibi Masamai Qum, my salam to you. You are the Noor of the Noor of Qum. You are the center of the city of knowledge. But all you heard was the shahadat of your brother, and you died. Ask Bibi Zainab until Zainabiyah. Everyone is surrounded. Shimmer, she says that I ran and Shimmer ran. Shimmer ran to the chest of Hussein. I ran to Zainabiyah. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين.